This is an interview with Charlie Wright, founder of CIELA. Firstly, thanks very much for the opportunity to have this interview with Estate Agent Today. Charlie, let's kick off with the fundamental question. Why have you created Cielo, and what is the problem or issue that you're hoping to address with it?
Thank you. Why we created Cielo was because there didn't appear to be any other organisation which had expressly aimed to represent the interests of independent agents. And there have been a lot of calls for a long time for an organisation like that to exist. We were very well aware that it would get a mixed reaction and that it may or may not succeed, but we felt there was enough support and desire to give it a go. The problem that we aim to solve with Cielo is one that I've been aiming to solve in 20 years in the industry, which is to make it easier for people selling or letting their homes to identify the best agent for them. The number one question I have been asked more by friends and family after 20 years in this industry is, how do I choose the agent that's best for me? And my answer is always the same, which is independent owner-managed agents tend generally to be more motivated simply by virtue of the fact they get 100% of the fee, whereas a corporate agent will only get a percentage of it if they're a local office. So generally speaking, pick the 2 or 3 of the independent agents that you most like the look of, meet each one, hear what they have to say, and choose the one you feel most comfortable with. That's my general advice in my entire career. That's the answer I've given people. So the public at large, and especially first-time sellers, who are by definition the most naive to the process, currently have no objective way of knowing how to go about the process of choosing the right agent. And that's probably the single most important decision for someone that needs to move, that needs to sell. And they don't know how to sell. And so that's the problem Cielo seeks to address. It's to help educate the public how to choose the right agent for them. That doesn't mean necessarily promoting our members. It's a general message, which is these are the things you need to be thinking about when you're selling your house. These are the things you need to be asking the agents that you choose to come in to your house. And the fact that every single different vendor or landlord's reason, certainly vendors anyway, for selling is different, is personal. Their reasons for moving might be different. They might be personal or emotional. They may be to do with work or family. It's not just about the money. And so there are areas of value that good agents add which can't be measured in monetary terms, i.e. the likelihood of getting a deal completed. So the problem is the public doesn't know how easily to identify the best agent for themselves. That's the problem Cielo seeks to address. I think there are several different reasons. The number one reason is that there is a sense of deep cynicism in the industry, and I think it's justified because attempts in the past have failed. Agents have got together and put up money and it hasn't worked, or it's backfired, and people are quite rightly cynical of the motivations of an organisation to do this. So number one is cynicism and caution, and I get that completely, which is why we've tried to make the barrier to entry very low and very low risk. So £35 a month with no contract and no tie-in is about as low as a risk that we thought we could set it to begin with. Secondly, one of the things that's become clear during this pre-launch period, and it's actually been the most interesting finding, is that the number of agents who have not fully complied with all the regulations they're supposed to comply with would appear to be bigger than we thought at first. And whether it's a deliberate choice not to bother, or whether it's down to incompetence, or whether it's down to anything else, for any agent to be able to look a vendor in the eye and say, I am qualified to deal with the sale of your most valuable asset, if they can't say, and by the way, I have complied with all the minimum legal regulations that make me a safe agent for you to choose, they shouldn't be selling anyone's house. And at the moment, there's no way for the public to identify the difference between agents who are complying with all of the onerous legislation that exists and those who aren't. And that, I think, is the single biggest danger. I also think that those agents who, for whatever reason, have not bothered or have not succeeded in meeting all the regulations are the ones who stand to lose the most from an organisation like CIELA that would shine a spotlight on them. And so, after discussions with the founder members, who've all been talking to lots of other agents, there have been a lot of off-the-record conversations between our founder members and other agents they're talking to about joining. The general feedback is there are a lot of agents who don't want this to happen because actually it would expose them. So it is an estimate, but I think it's as many as a third of independent agents are complying with perhaps some of the rules, but not all of them. And the point is, no matter what you think about how appropriate the rules may or may not be, it's the law. And if you want to sell somebody's house, you need to be able to say that you're a law-abiding business. And if you're not, you shouldn't be in business. And if you're not, you're part of the reason the industry has such a bad reputation. We won't know whether or not we're going to launch until the end of September. This 6-month pre-launch period was always set to run 6 months no matter what the outcome. We deemed that the minimum necessary but also sufficiently long period to establish whether there was enough interest and to allow enough time for debate. I don't know what the exact numbers are, and for my own reasons, I'm leaving. I'm keeping myself out of that. I find the precise numbers at this point to be completely irrelevant as to whether or not the industry actually wishes there to be an organisation like this or not. I mean, whether the number is 1 or 10 or 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, what relevance is it at this stage? I don't know.
But which of those 5 numbers is it nearest to?
I don't know. I can put my hand on my heart and tell you I don't know.
How
I
many
genuinely don't
CIELA
know. It to me, it's an irrelevant thing. It's a number.
But what led you to issue a press statement saying that as of a few weeks ago, it was unlikely to launch because there hadn't been a lot of take-up?
There was a very specific reason for that.
There must have been some decision then that it hadn't been as popular, some measurement.
We had this overwhelming initial rush of support and agents registering and sending us emails saying this is fantastic. Right at the start, when we very first announced our intention, this is before we had even sort of gone ahead with the pre-launch period, and we were still just discussing we may or may not launch it. And we were genuinely, pleasantly delighted with the levels of support. And for reasons that I can't answer, less than 10% of those who sort of affirmed their support and said, let us know when we can join, let us know where to go to join, haven't. And we've had discussions with founder members who've been and met other agents that they said, we would love you to join, and the people they've spoken to have said, yes, we'll join, but they haven't. Now, whether it's simply a question of it's a piece of administration they haven't got round to, whether it's cynicism, whether it's actually they're worried about who else is going to be joining, I don't actually know. But so all I can tell you is we had this extraordinary thing where to begin with we had huge levels of support shown, and a large number of those people have yet to join. Now, I think a lot of them, to be fair, are sitting on the fence and telling us that they're sitting on the fence, saying we're still waiting to see, we're still not sure, we like the idea, we're waiting to see whether we actually want to get behind this idea or not. And we always knew that the wait and see, which is what kills most of these attempts, we knew it would be one of our biggest risks. But in the last couple of weeks, we've seen it has picked up. The number of registrations and people joining, actually becoming paying members of the pre-launch membership, has started to increase. And it's certainly given me the feeling, but it's nothing more than a feeling, that actually we're on track, yes, to be able to launch in October. But what happens through the summer period, I don't know. What happens in September, I don't know. If it stalls again, then no, we won't have enough members to launch. If it continues on its current trajectory, I think we will. I think it won't be comfortable, but I think we will. But if we manage to gather any momentum and pace, then I think we could comfortably launch, yeah. First of all, I'd like to just correct you slightly. We've been critical of improper conduct, not of corporates themselves. So every kind of business has a right to exist if it plays by the rules, if it abides by the laws. But businesses large and small will sometimes try to manipulate the rules and get away with things that they shouldn't get away with, whether it be misleading adverts, whether it be not complying with the law. So CIELA stands against any improper conduct in the industry, no matter what kind of business it comes from, because that's damaging the industry's reputation as a whole. So that's our stance. It's not particularly corporate or particularly online or particularly independent agent. It's if you break the rules, you are necessarily and by definition undermining the credibility of the industry as a whole. It doesn't matter who you are, what size you are. So yes, Cielo will aggressively pursue the exposure of improper conduct, because we believe that improper conduct doesn't serve the public, certainly doesn't serve the industry, and unless somebody pursues it, people will continue to get away with it at the expense of those decent law-abiding agents and their customers. So
okay.
The second part of your question, has it affected whether members take us up or not? I don't know. I have no idea. But what we're certainly not going to be is a benign sitting on the fence, don't want to upset anybody, treading on eggshells. Absolutely not. Where we see improper conduct, and you mentioned purple bricks, where it is absolutely our stated case, as we set out, that we believe their adverts are misleading, and that's the only reason they even have a business, was because of their adverts. I mean, Easy Property went out of business effectively. I mean, it's been bought out because it didn't try to mislead customers, and its business model didn't succeed in its first guise. Purple Bricks' marketing has been extraordinarily successful. The marketing has been extraordinarily successful. And this is just a simple fact, their marketing has persuaded customers to part with, on average, £1,000 for the chance of selling their house at a price that may or may not be as good as full service agents would achieve. Those are all factual statements. So the adverts imply, and the most recent advert says there's no commission. It doesn't say, but there's a fee. It just says there's no commission. So the implication is it's free. That gets people in the door to do valuations, and that's when they say you haven't got to pay now, you can pay at the end of 10 months, just sign here. People are seduced by the prospect of saving money on compared to what a traditional agent charges. And as many of the Trustpilot reviews show, people regret it. A lot of people regret it. So I don't object to Purple Bricks' existence or their business model. What is objectionable is misleading customers into parting with money they won't get back, whether they sell or not. The most important difference will be that everything will be signed off by members first. So one of the things we've already done is built in a voting system. So we will be able to track the votes of every single member, so that we're ready right from day one to be able to put significant decisions to the members by the vote electronically straight away. So the biggest difference will be, at the moment it's a consultation process with the founders and the regional members before we make big decisions. But we are effectively in campaign mode at the moment and recruitment mode. We're not actually performing any function yet. We are attempting to launch. Once we launch, Cielo will be an organisation that only does what its members have asked it to do. That's the biggest single difference. So we will present the members with options and say, we recommend this, yes or no. And if the majority of members vote for it, then we'll proceed and follow that up. But so far, every member that's joined has said, yes, they support the exposing of improper practice wherever it may be. So I think there's also the question of lack of enforcement of rules by government. And I think there are possibilities for using technology effectively to allow agents to very easily display whether they're complying or not with the law. So aggressive, no. Shining the spotlight of transparency on an industry, yes. Which will serve the public because they will be able to avoid the offenders. However many there may be, I don't know, but I think it's more than we thought to begin with. And also the good agents who deserve more business will win more business because the public will be avoiding the offenders and will be able to more easily spot those who have jumped through all the hoops and gone through the paperwork and the legislation. Well, we're not going to give our adversaries the heads up, and if people aren't members, then they have no right to demand answers to any of these questions. Members will have absolute transparency, so it is the plan to allow the members to appoint their own auditors at whatever frequency they wish. It might be quarterly, it might be annually, but the members will be able to choose their own auditors to inspect precisely what happens with every last penny of the members' money. So it goes without saying in my book that members of an organisation where all of your funding is coming from your member subscriptions absolutely entitled to know exactly how it's used, and the members will get to know how it's used. But what I'm not going to do is to publicly declare stuff to people who are looking for reasons to throw stones at us, and whose opinions, some of whose opinions are unqualified. So for example, if there are agents out there who are in fear of being exposed as lawbreakers, frankly, their opinions are not valid to us. I think CIELA is filling a niche that currently has nothing to offer that niche. I think the bar set by the NAEA and ALA is very high, commendably high. You have to pass exams as individuals, you have a lot of codes of conduct to follow, and it is a time-consuming and requires real commitment to become a member of those, and I have absolute respect for its longevity and its professionalism and what it does. But I made no secret of the fact that I think there are things that it doesn't do. And I don't think that's the responsibility of the people running it. I think that's the responsibility of its rules, which have been in place a very long time and perhaps need updating. But I wouldn't know how you go about updating a set of rules as old as that. So I don't have knowledge of the inner workings of the organisation. I think it performs a very important function. I think if you are an NAEA or ALA member, you can proudly display that as saying, actually, we've gone beyond minimum legal requirements. There are questions as to how effective it is, because when a company like Purple Bricks, who has hundreds of self-employed, unqualified people directly dealing with customers and acting on their behalf, there are questions to be asked about whether or not it's misleading to say that they're an NAEA member. And I do urge the NAEA to come forward and either defend Purple Bricks' membership or the NAEA, or otherwise, but say something. Their silence is, on that particular front, I think has been shocking, given how much offence has been caused by Purple Bricks' advertising campaigns that actually target other NAEA members. So I don't see any overlap between what CIELA intends to do and what NAEA and ALA do. They are training organisations, they are compliance organisations, and they're exceptionally good at what they do. What our members have said is nobody is helping the public tell the difference between good corporate agents and good independent agents, and there are differences. I see independent estate agency, even for those highly competent and successful independent businesses, is getting harder and harder and more challenging. There's more and more legislation and red tape. There's more and more competition from unregulated small startups. There's more and more challenges from technology, which is a difficult thing to invest in when you're a small business, and the large businesses have an advantage there. I think there are market challenges as well. There are the things in the economy, the availability of mortgages, uncertainty about Brexit and whether there's going to be another election or not. All of these things are challenges that together amount to the most challenging conditions I've ever seen for independent estate agents. And at the moment, zero is being done collectively on behalf of those agents to counter that. The independent section of the industry does not have any reputation management whatsoever. So we can see what happens when you don't have that. The public's perception is unfairly poor. And it's set by the examples of some highly publicised rogues that do terrible things, and that they all get tarred with the same brush, and no one is standing up and pushing back against that. So what would happen to the industry as a whole? I can only see it getting harder and harder and harder. More jobs being lost, more misleading tech-based companies having short flashes of success until they finally get exposed and then will burn out. What happens with the members who signed up? Nothing. I mean, it'll simply be a question of the three possibilities that can happen at the end of September will be this. Number one, we clearly haven't got anywhere near enough to launch, and it'll simply be a question of thank you very much, everyone that's tried, we failed. That's it. And it'll be put on ice. Rather than killed, it would be put on ice and put on a shelf with everything that we've built ready to be revived should enough. Who knows what happens down further down the road, but that's option number one. Option number two is we clearly have enough to launch and we proceed with the launch. Option number three is we're close, and if we're close, I would then ask the members what they wanted to do. So I said to the members, do you want to quit? do you want to up the subscription you're paying to make it viable? Or do you want to perhaps extend the pre-launch period by another month or two if they think that might be all it takes? So if it's touch and go, it will be up to the members to decide.
Okay, Charlie Wright, thanks very much indeed for
Thank
your
you
time.
very much, Graham. Thanks a lot.